Welcome to Archive 999 M41 Tales from the Imperium. Before you lies a vast universe, thousands of worlds chained together in endless darkness, a realm of power, of war, of shadow. Every planet has its story. Every hero or villain makes choices that shape destiny, and each decision can shake the galaxy to its core. Imagine standing on a world of the Imperium. In the distance, Gothic spires blaze with light, massive avenues stretch below. Space Marines march, warfleets cut through a crimson sky, burning with war. Alarms thunder from towering fortresses, mixing with the roar of starships. You feel its might, but also the crushing weight of an empire struggling to survive against endless threats. In the Imperium, every world matters, every soul matters, every choice matters. Power brings not only strength, but heavy responsibility. A single mistake, a single betrayal, and disaster can engulf the galaxy. These fragile lines between survival and ruin are what make Warhammer 40k both beautiful and tragic. But the Imperium is not all. Beyond its order, countless other powers rise, each with their own ideals, their own strength, their own schemes. Chaos, Eldar, Orks, Tyranids, every faction adds to the storm of war and danger. And within this storm, extraordinary beings appear, primarchs, heroes, traitors. They leave marks that can never be erased. Some rise, some betray, some sacrifice, some unleash chaos. And every choice they make decides the fate of millions. Yet this universe is not forged by war alone. Here, science and sorcery collide. The warp psychers devastating technologies, colossal fleets. Faith and legend intertwine with Gothic culture, weaving a dark and grand tapestry. Every myth, every symbol, every story reminds us that past, present, and future are forever bound. Now ask yourself, if you stood on a world engulfed in war, would you choose loyalty or rebellion? Would you rise as a hero to lead armies, or fall into darkness as a villain spreading chaos? Would you cling to the Imperium's power, or defy it to protect your ideals? In today's journey, we will walk through the Imperium, the heart of mankind. We will explore its rivals, witness legendary battles, meet the primarchs and champions, uncover the warp, the psychers, the machines of war, and finally, lose ourselves in legend, mystery, and Gothic culture. Each chapter will blend story, analysis, commentary, and questions, so you will not only listen, but truly feel the Warhammer 40k universe in the most natural way. Now prepare yourself. This is the Imperium, where every 40k story begins, where power, faith, and war converge, and where our journey has only just begun. When we speak of the Imperium, we are not merely talking about an empire. It is the beating heart of humanity in the universe of the 41st millennium, a vast entity that stretches across thousands of worlds. Yet each planet under its banner carries its own shade, its own story, and its own burden for those who live there. The Imperium was forged from the ashes of ancient terror, Earth itself, with the Emperor, a being who is both sovereign and divine, standing at the very center of power. He is not only the founder, but the source of inspiration, law, and light that guides all mankind. But to maintain the survival of such a colossal dominion in a galaxy consumed by chaos, the Imperium enforces a system of strict governance, where discipline and authority are bound tightly to responsibility and sacrifice. Imagine walking upon the sacred soil of Terra, the throne world of the Imperium. The capital stretches beneath the glow of towering Gothic spires, while grand avenues echo with the march of endless patrols. Above, vast fleets drift across the skies like steel dragons, their hulls glimmering with light. Every step upon these avenues is a reminder that each action carries weight, and that loyalty is never taken for granted. The Imperium is not only law and order, it is a place where faith and religion fuse together, forming the glue that holds mankind through the storms of war and corruption. Mighty cathedrals, vast monasteries, elaborate rituals, all serve a single purpose: to strengthen devotion to the Emperor and shield humanity from annihilation. Yet with this faith comes pressure. Any hint of neglect, any shadow of betrayal, is met with swift punishment, often with one's very life. The galaxy of the Imperium is organized into sectors, subsectors, and planetary domains. Each world lies beneath the watchful eye of imperial officials and central institutions. Some planets, rich in ore, become forges of endless weapons. Others stand as research hubs of knowledge. Far-flung worlds are fortified bastions, guarding the borders of mankind. Every planet must contribute to the greatness and security of the Imperium, and in return each submits to relentless oversight, sometimes even crushing oppression from the center of power. Among the Imperium's strongest arms are the Space Marines and the Adeptus Administratum. The Space Marines, genetically enhanced warriors, stand as living icons of might, courage, and unwavering loyalty. They battle not only alien invaders but also enforce internal order, striking down any who threaten the Emperor's realm. Meanwhile, the Adeptus Administratum, a vast administrative machine, ensures that every world keeps turning, managing resources, armies, and information. It is a system both intricate and merciless, where even the smallest error can unleash disaster on a galactic scale. But the Imperium is not always united. Within its immense reach, contradictions and fractures often stir. A planet may fall into isolation from failed governance. A general might defy the Emperor's command. Secrets from the past can resurface to shatter fragile order. This is what gives the Imperium its depth. It is not perfect, but it endures through faith, discipline, and collective strength. Take the example of Cadia, a fortress world at the edge of the galaxy. For millennia, it withstood endless invasions from the forces of chaos, held firm by the spirit and discipline of its defenders. Yet its reliance on order and centralized command also made it vulnerable when outside forces shifted. Cadia's fate became a grim reminder that even the strongest bastion of the Imperium is never beyond loss. The Imperium is also a guardian of culture and tradition, preserved with iron will. Art, architecture, clothing, rituals, all embody its signature Gothic style. Each world bears its own symbols, from statues of the Emperor to sacred icons of the ecclesiarchy, constant reminders of duty and of mankind's place within the galaxy. This culture is both strength and burden. It binds people together, yet it presses down upon them with unyielding weight. And within this vast web of faith, power, and order, each individual carries a role. A citizen may labor in the forges that supply weapons, a soldier may guard the frontier, a bureaucrat's decision may seal the fate of an entire planet. Every action leaves its mark, and every choice is tested against war, treachery, and the dark whispers of the warp. Ask yourself, if you lived within the Imperium, what path would you choose? Would you devote yourself in absolute loyalty to the Emperor, or carve your own way amidst the shadows? Would you stand as a defender of the light, or be consumed by the weight of power? This is the very essence of the Imperium's appeal and its tragedy. A mighty empire, yet never flawless. It is the stage where every Warhammer 40,000 story begins. In exploring the Imperium, we witness not only legends and triumphs, but also failures and tragedies. We learn to examine power, faith, and responsibility, and to ask ourselves, in a galaxy this vast, what would you choose? The Imperium of Man is a vast machine, immense yet fragile, both a bastion of faith and a symbol of oppression. Within the Emperor's golden light lies both greatness and decay, and it is this contradiction that makes the Imperium the cradle of countless tragedies, where even a single mistake may plunge the galaxy into the abyss. But the Imperium is not the only force shaping the fate of the galaxy. Beyond its borders, and sometimes even within them, countless other powers exist, each carrying its own ideals, ambitions, and strength. Some dare to challenge the Emperor's authority. Others exist solely to bring humanity to extinction, and some stand as proof that in the darkness of the cosmos, justice has never truly existed. This is where the picture of Warhammer 40,000 expands, a galaxy not only belonging to the Imperium, but a place where countless powers clash, overlap, and shift the course of destiny. First come the Adeptus Astartes, or Space Marines, the superhuman warriors of the Imperium. Each has undergone genetic transformation, brutal training, and sworn unbreakable loyalty to the Emperor. They stand as symbols of strength, discipline, and valor, the elite force deployed in most critical campaigns. Examples include the Blood Angels, known for their fierce spirit and unyielding loyalty, and the Ultramarines, paragons of strategy and order. The Space Marines are not just living weapons, but banners of faith, inspiring hope across the Imperium. Yet the Imperium faces its greatest threat in chaos, not merely an enemy, but the embodiment of ambition, betrayal, and the sorcery of the warp. Chaos wages war not only through force, but by infiltrating minds, sowing disorder, and reshaping entire worlds. The most infamous example is the Horus Heresy, the rebellion that led to one of the Imperium's bloodiest wars, where the Emperor faced his own son, a Primarch, in a cataclysmic duel. This was not only a tragedy of power, but a reminder of how fragile loyalty and faith can be. Then there are the Eldar, a race of unmatched technology and psychic foresight. They can be enemies or unexpected allies, often appearing at decisive moments, a constant reminder to the Imperium that the galaxy is far greater than humanity can grasp. In contrast, the Orks embody chaos in its rawest form, savage, warlike, existing only to fight and destroy every world they overrun falls into endless carnage. Proof that danger in 40k arises not only from schemes, but from primal destruction. The Tyranids are yet another nightmare, a swarm that consumes everything to sustain itself. They descend on planets, stripping them bare, leaving nothing behind. The Tyranids are a living warning of biological and environmental annihilation, unpredictable and impossible to reason with. Each of these powers carries its own way of war, its own ideals, and its own philosophy, painting a layered picture of war, politics, and power in the 41st millennium. More importantly, they never act in isolation. Battles between these factions and the Imperium are not just military conflicts, but contests of will, hidden intrigues, and cultural collisions. For example, when chaos invades a planet, the Space Marines do more than raise their weapons. They must also sustain the faith of the people and plan for a lasting strategy. This shows the overwhelming complexity of the 40k universe. So, ask yourself this: if you were a commander here, would you charge into battle head-on, or weave strategy to protect the world? Would you remain loyal to the Imperium, or break away to forge a new path? These choices are what make the stories of 40k cinematic and alive. Beyond the major powers, there are also smaller yet significant factions. The Tau, with their advanced technology and vision of cooperation, or the Necrons, ancient machine beings with near-immortal strength. Though less prominent, they too can shift the tide of wars, proving that in 40k, no faction is ever meaningless. Every faction also reflects its own culture, faith, and philosophy. Chaos exalts the dark gods of the warp, the Eldar preserve ancient secrets, the Orks thrive on endless war, the Tyranids live only to consume, and the Necrons embody memory and immortality. This diversity weaves unique strategies, schemes, and stories into every planet and every battle. Together, the Imperium and its rivals form a galaxy both vast and multi-layered, where war, politics, religion, culture, and individual will all collide. Each faction reveals both its strength and its limits, raising endless questions of faith, duty, and choice. From this wider view, we see not only destruction and war, but how each faction asserts its identity, fights for its ideals, and leaves its mark upon history. That is why every tale in 40,000 carries depth. You are not only witnessing battles, but also philosophies, psychologies, and strategies hidden behind them. And as the factions collide, they do not only fight the Imperium, but also each other. A world may be overrun by Orks, saved unexpectedly by the Eldar, then corrupted by chaos, forcing the Space Marines to rally every resource to hold it together. These stories remind us that in 40k no power is absolute. Every decision, whether a military maneuver or a personal act, can shape the fate of a planet, even the fate of the galaxy. So when you look at the powers beyond the Imperium, ask yourself, in this maelstrom, would you choose peace, war, or conspiracy? Would you strive to seize power, or let ambition and desire consume you? These are the questions at the core of the Warhammer 40k experience, where every choice, every action leaves a mark. And beyond these factions open the gates to legendary wars, iconic heroes, and the mysteries of the war, all of it building into a universe of great depth, cinematic in scope, always compelling us to follow its endless stories. War in the universe of Warhammer 40,000 has never been just the sound of gunfire or the march of armies. It is the soundtrack of an age, the very breath of the Imperium, a thread that both sustains existence and drags humanity deeper into the abyss of despair. Across the galaxy, from blazing industrial worlds to deserted star systems, explosions roar, screams echo, and metal clashes, forming a relentless symphony of war. But beneath the smoke and fire, another front rages with equal ferocity, the front of politics, of faith, and of power. From the dawn of the human empire, war has been an inevitability. The Imperium survives through conquest, expansion, and the crushing of its enemies. In a galaxy teeming with violent Orks, bloodthirsty Tyranids, Necrons rising from millennia of slumber, and chaos ever lurking, humanity has no right to peace. Yet one must ask, are these wars truly fought to preserve life, or have they become the very essence of Imperium civilization? Imagine a planet today glowing with millions of lights, smoke rising from factories, church bells ringing across the skyline. Tomorrow, only fire and burning debris remain. Under a blood-red sky, crusades spanning millennia see squads of Space Marines marching into death, not for personal glory, but in the name of the immortal Emperor. For them, dying in battle is not tragedy. It is salvation, a divine command, faith in an eternal Imperium. Yet war in 40,000 does not only unfold on the battlefield, it creeps into every corridor of power, where the High Lords of Terror sit on their cold thrones. Every word, decree, and vote can determine the fate of billions of souls. A wrong troop deployment, a harsh tax edict, a cover-up, any of these could ignite rebellion or massacre. You see, death in the Imperium often comes not from the guns of Orks or Tyranids, but from cold calculations, seals, and papers far away on Terra. And that is the true tragedy. The Imperium fights its enemies outside, yet endlessly devours itself from within. Have you ever wondered why uprisings, chaos cults, and renegade fleets appear across the galaxy? It is no coincidence. When billions of citizens live under brutal rule, when faith is imposed through fear, when every prayer is monitored by the Inquisition, political warfare becomes fertile ground for rebellion. And from the shadows, chaos needs only plant a small promise. Freedom, power, or simply a life not crushed, and entire worlds can ignite. History proves it. Countless wars cloaked in religion, called the War of Faith, are in truth purges for power. Cardinals of the ecclesiarchy unleash armies to purge heretics, burning entire worlds, while the true goal is control, wealth, dominance. How many billions have died? How many planets have turned to ash? All for the ambition of a few sitting on distant thrones. And ironically, these senseless wars are what keep the Imperium standing, not for justice, but because a civilization built on violence cannot survive if violence ceases. Now, imagine yourself as an ordinary citizen in the Imperium. You wake in a smoke-filled slum, knowing your world could be attacked by Orks at any moment. You work 12, 18, even 20 hours a day in the factories, contributing just a fraction to the colossal war machine. You hear sermons of glory and loyalty. Yet in your heart, you know you are a grain of sand, disposable at the whim of decisions made far away on Terra. What would you do? Continue to obey or seek another path, even if it leads to chaos? War in 40,000 is not only a means of survival, it is a tool of control. When the enemy is always at the gates, citizens rarely dare to question their rulers. Perhaps the Imperium understands this. Perhaps unending war is the way the High Lords keep trillions of souls trapped in fear, instead of daring to ask. And if you were one of them, could you even dream of a day without war? A painful paradox emerges. War is both the cause of suffering and the glue that holds the Imperium together. If the guns fell silent tomorrow, would the human empire know peace, or would it rot from within, collapsing under its own weight? Cinematic images of 40k often show space marines charging into storming gunfire, titans crushing entire cities. But the truly terrifying scenes are not when bullets fly, but when the Imperium's politicians sit in sealed chambers, hands on galactic maps, deciding the fate of billions as if moving pieces on a chessboard. This is the coldest war. The war of power, of calculation, of indifference to life. And as you take in the full panorama, you cannot help but ask yourself, is the Imperium any different from the enemies it claims to oppose? If chaos is darkness, the Imperium is blinding light, consuming all to survive. One side destroys through chaos. The other sustains itself through violence and fear. In this war, who is the true victor? And perhaps, there is no victor at all, only ash and blood. After enduring endless wars, after witnessing factions tearing each other apart in the shadows of the galaxy, the most important way to understand this universe is to look at humanity, at the figures who either illuminated history or plunged it into darkness. If war is the grand canvas, they are the defining strokes, the faces we remember, and the scars that never fade. Every step they take, every choice they make, sends ripples across millennia, affecting billions of lives. Ask yourself, if you were in their place, what would you do? In this universe, the line between hero and villain has never been clear. Warriors, traitors, those consumed by unwavering faith or boundless hatred, all walk the stage of a grand tragedy, where light and darkness are as fragile as a breath. They are more than victories or defeats. They are living tragedies, falls from grace, questions history has never answered. To speak of them is not merely to recount battles, but to remember the scars of ideals and belief, the loneliness even the galaxy cannot see. Among these figures, the Primarchs, the 20 superhuman sons of the Emperor, stand unmissable. Robert Guilliman, the master strategist, embodies reason and foresight. He returns from the shadows of time to lead the Imperium in its darkest hour. Yet, can his dream of a more humane, rational empire survive? When billions live by blind faith and fear, Guilliman faces not only enemies without, but the rotting machinery he is forced to uphold. He must operate an inflexible Imperium where ideals clash with harsh reality, and every mistake costs millions of lives. In contrast stands Lemonruss, the wolf-blooded warrior, living by instinct and absolute loyalty. On the battlefield, he swings his massive axe through ice and snow, roaring like a storm, striking fear into friend and foe alike. But can a warrior who charges blindly into fire recognize the cracks in the system he serves? Heroes like Russ shine brilliantly, yet it is precisely their absoluteness that blinds them to the truth. They fight with muscle and instinct, but can they comprehend the pain, the despair, the silent sacrifices each strategic choice brings? Alongside these titans are smaller, yet haunting figures, the Inquisitors, scouring the galaxy for heresy. They are deemed ruthless, cruel, yet bear the weight of keeping the Imperium from collapse. When an Inquisitor orders the incineration of an entire world to stop chaos from spreading, is he a murderer or a savior? The tragedy is that such immense sacrifice is never celebrated as heroism, only condemned as crime. Can you imagine the weight of it? Every choice is between death and devastation, between sacrifice and preservation, and no one can escape history's judgment. And if there are heroes, there are also traitors who turn the galaxy into hell. Horus Lupercal, the War Master, the Emperor's favored son, is the one who decides humanity's fate. Horus was not born to betray. Once the greatest hope, the guiding light of the Imperium, but when chaos seeped into his heart, greatness turned to hatred. The moment Horus kneels to darkness is the moment the Emperor's dream turns to ash. The tragedy is not just betrayal, but that Horus still harbors love, loyalty, and a desire for justice. Because he loved too much and trusted too deeply, darkness found its way. It is a Greek-style tragedy. The greatest hero becomes a dagger in his father's heart. From Horus we learn a haunting truth. Anyone can fall. Do you see their loneliness, their despair, their wrong choices reflected in yourself? And if you were in their position, could you uphold your ideals or would you succumb to darkness? Other Primarchs share similar fates. Angron, the chained son, tortured into pure rage. Fulgrim, the seeker of perfection, enslaved by indulgence. Perturabo, a genius builder, shunned, transformed into a being of vengeance. All were once heroes, and all fell into irredeemable darkness. The cruelest tragedy is not betrayal itself, but that it repeats throughout human history, as if the universe was born to test faith, strength, and loyalty. In a galaxy like this, do pure heroes exist, or are all crushed between two extremes? Unreachable ideals, and irresistible temptation. Those who protect humanity may become monsters. Those who betray often begin with righteous reasons. The question forces reflection. If it were you, which side would you choose? In a place without peace, where war is eternal destiny, the price of heroism is total sacrifice. These figures, whether revered or cursed, know one truth. They do not fight for ultimate victory, but to buy humanity another day. They do not fight for happiness, for in this universe happiness is an illusion. They fight because if they do not, there is nothing left to protect. And this is the most haunting truth. In a universe where even heroes can betray, in a galaxy where villains once loved, is there still room for absolute faith? When we look at them, we are forced to ask ourselves if we stood in their place. Could we hold on to our ideals, or be dragged into darkness, amid fire and ashes, faith and love? Even the greatest ideals are fragile, like a single breath. And that is the never-ending story of the Warhammer 40,000 universe. Have you ever wondered what truly shapes the fate of the 40k universe beneath the roar of guns and endless battles? When we look at brutal wars, heroes, and villains shaping the Imperium, it's easy to miss a deeper, darker reality. The realm of the warp, not just a faster-than-light highway, it is a sea of primal emotions, where faith, ambition, and desire converge into forces that can save or destroy worlds. Journeys that last mere days in reality can stretch into centuries in this unseen domain. Ships lost vanish into massive psychic storms. In this maelstrom for chaos gods, Khorne, Dzinj, Nurgle, and Slaanesh manipulate, seeding dark desires into the hearts of humanity. A moment of despair, a flash of hatred, a spark of ambition, enough to open the door for warp entities to spill into reality. Amidst this chaos, special individuals arise. Psychers, humans capable of touching powers no one else can reach. Some become warriors, hurling destructive energy from afar. Others are astropaths carrying messages across the galaxy, keeping the vast Imperium connected. But such power comes with danger. One slip, one loss of control, and their soul can be torn apart. opening the door for warp beings to enter reality. Every day, millions of anonymous psychers are brought to Terra, sacrificed to the Astronomicon, the sole light guiding the entire Imperium. Each death is a brick holding civilization together, but also a reminder that life in 40k is inseparable from sacrifice and risk. Witnessing this, one cannot help but ask, can a civilization truly progress if built on the deaths of millions? It is not just its technology in 40k reflects the same paradox. The Imperium wields massive war machines, titans capable of destroying entire worlds, yet society worships them as gods. The Adeptus Mechanicus treats every component as a relic, every algorithm as scripture, repairing machines through ritual and prayer. The past once knew the men of iron, conscious AI, yet they betrayed humanity, nearly annihilating it. Since then, all AI is forbidden, and humans live in fear of their own creations. Titans, spacecraft, weapons of mass destruction, function only when humans worship correctly. A superstition outsiders in the warp see as extreme folly. Warp psychers and technology are more than tools. They embody fear, ambition, and the desire for control. The warp represents what humans cannot grasp. Psychers hold power that can save or curse. Technology is trusted, yet barely understood. Look closer, and the 40,000 universe is not just war. It is a mirror of eternal tragedy, the thirst for power, the fear of losing control, and the cost of ambition. Look at the prominent psychers. Magnus, the Red Primarch of the Thousand Suns, is living proof, extraordinary knowledge and power. Yet a thirst for understanding brought catastrophe when he unwittingly opened a door for Tessench to manipulate. Meanwhile, anonymous astropaths sacrificed themselves for the Astronomicon, keeping planets in contact at the cost of life and soul. Technology tells the same story. Titans, colossal war machines, symbols of absolute power, yet also immense burden. Maintaining, operating, and controlling them requires a religious system, a mechanism of mental discipline and faith, to prevent humans from being overwhelmed by their own creations. The Men of Iron showed the consequences of underestimating AI. Since then, all artificial intellect is banned, and scientific progress is shackled by superstition. When humans lose control of technology, the tragedy they create surpasses any enemy. Compared to modern sci-fi, warp psychers and technology in 40,000 are a double-edged weapon of tragedy, salvation or annihilation. A door opens quickly, yet hides danger. A gift, yet a curse. A power, yet a chain. These elements deepen the narrative and ask an age-old question. Is power worth the cost of humanity? Can humanity truly control what it creates? Looking at the full picture of warp psychers and technology, the truth is clear. Power comes with responsibility. Knowledge comes with risk, and every choice carries a price. There are no absolute heroes, no purely good or evil forces, only beings striving to survive, fighting, and sacrificing in a world where ideals and reality are tested to the limit. And in the end, when we take in the entirety of warp psychers and technology, a profound message emerges. In the 40k universe, power bears responsibility, knowledge bears risk, and every decision carries its cost. There are no absolute heroes, no forces of pure good or evil, only beings struggling to exist, to fight, and to sacrifice in a world where both ideals and reality are pushed to the edge. And so, the ultimate question for you, like an echo of cinematic caution, if you were in humanity's place in 40k, would you choose power, or hold on to your humanity, despite the peril around you? Once you understand the brutal wars, the heroes and the villains, the power of the warp psychers and technology, the next step is to explore legend, mystery, and culture, the spiritual layer that gives depth to the 40k universe. This is where every event, character, and piece of technology is tied together through stories, beliefs, and rituals, not just explaining actions, but shaping the identity of each planet, each people of the Imperium. Every world carries its own tales. On Cadia, once an impregnable fortress, people speak of heroes who stood against tens of thousands of demons and prevailed, even if it cost their lives. On the Forge worlds, the stories emphasize the sanctity of technology, the titans that no engineer dares touch without proper ritual. These tales serve as lessons, teaching people how to live, how to fight, and how to remain loyal to the Imperium. While Cadia highlights courage and sacrifice, the Forge worlds remind of reverence and respect for knowledge. Through these stories, soldiers and civilians find meaning amid violence and chaos. Great legends are always entwined with mystery. Some planets hide things beyond explanation, abandoned temples, ancient machines beyond modern understanding, or warp anomalies that make starships steer clear. Throne World Terror is the prime example, holding countless relics from Primarch weapons to artifacts capable of shifting the tide of war. Mystery doesn't just thrill, it manipulates the mind, an empire that thrives on AEW sanctifying everything around it. Culture in the Imperium is layered and complex. Rituals, uniforms, military organization, even the way funerals are held, all carry deep symbolism. A space marine, when donning his armor, wears not just a war machine but centuries of belief and tradition. On Forge Worlds, a mechanicus engineer repairs machines with prayers and rites, believing even the machinery has a soul. These actions teach a fascinating lesson when facing powers beyond control. Faith and culture become a spiritual anchor. Culture and legend are also weapons of the mind in war. In battles that last millennia, soldiers stand firm, inspired by symbols, tales of fallen heroes, or ancient curses. An Adeptus Astartes gazing upon a fallen Primarchus statue is reminded they are part of the continuing legend, a strength sometimes greater than any weapon. Thus, mental fortitude in 40k is as vital as physical might or technology, and faith is what keeps the Imperium standing amidst endless war and chaos. Legends often revolve around specific figures, making the stories vivid and cinematic. Saint Celestine, the holy heroine, embodies hope amid the storm. Khan the Betrayer, a man consumed by chaos, shows what happens when faith and power go astray. These characters bring the stories to life and remind us that power, belief, and personal choice are always intertwined, shaping history. In 40k, legend and culture reflect how people try to control their world. When science, the warp psychers, and technology cannot explain everything, stories appear as a spiritual network, guiding actions, motivating, and justifying harsh decisions. The mix of reality, belief, and myth creates a cinematic world, dazzling yet dark, where the audience is swept along by action, yet forced to reflect on human nature. And now, the choice is yours: belief, power, or reason. Do you have the courage to face the consequences of your choice? And so, we have journeyed through the entire universe of 40k, from the mighty Imperium of humanity, to the factions torn by conflict, war, and politics. From heroes and villains, to the power of the warp and the sucker's technology, legends, mysteries, and culture, all intertwined, shaping a universe vast, dark, beautiful, and terrifying. Throughout this journey, every element is not just a story, but a lesson, a message. Power always comes with responsibility. Faith can save or destroy, and the choices of mortals shape the very fate of the Imperium. The warp, psychers, technology, war, legends, all connected, forming a complex web where every detail matters. So if you stood within the 40k universe, would you rely on power, reason, or faith? Do you have the courage to face the consequences of that choice? Let these questions accompany you, just as the stories of 40k echo across millennia. Thank you for journeying with us. If you wish to continue exploring these stories, mysteries, and deeper analyses, hit subscribe and step further into the universe of 40k.